I'll take money, and you're gonna be Shinzo? Then, oh, that's really far away. Okay. And then, you're Black Flag, that's fine. You consolidate and get on the boats, and then Okinawa, I want you. And all your money. Thank you. I do not care about that. I have to core that, and then I get Taiwan. Okay.
It's the Nerdist Writers Panel, and it's hosted by Ben Blecker, where he gets a bunch of writers and he asks them lots of questions, and it's starting now, so this will be the end of the theme.
Is it a strategic location, or is it just
really expensive? Well, so it's I can actually tell you exactly where it is. Hold on. So Fujian. I think this is parts of southern China. Areas. Fujian. Yeah. So it's the east coast of China.
okay?
Plus a bunch of stuff in the Philippine Islands.
So basically, you're just expanding the Southwest out there.
Yep. Pretty much. Yeah, I'm getting to the south. I'm trying to convert my land base as quick as I can, because religious unity is one of those things that when you have it, life is so much easier. When you don't have it, you can feel it. So. Yeah, when you don't have high religious unity, it makes it yeah, well, yeah, it's that, but like stuff is more expensive.
The real issue.
Right. It's all about cost. Oh, yeah, good. And so, I mean, I've conquered parts of the Kamchat dolls. Not exactly sure what that.
Is that like the atolls or things north of Japan off of Kamchatka? Off the peninsula?
Yes, that's correct.
Why?
I am impressed.
Mostly to music right now.
Okay.
And then
could only afford another stack of beans. Welcome back. Now I can. Yep. So I've got permanent claims on Taiwan. They will be next.
So for me, what am I doing? Well, minor little things. I am in a constant press this week, starting yesterday mostly, to clean my house again. And in a way,
yes.
it's not the normal, like, just cleaning for somebody to come over and say, hey, because I actually did the first step and looked at my upstairs and kind of looked at it, actually, it's not nearly as messed up or dirty as I thought it might be. This isn't going to be nearly a problem. I just have to put some things away. But the challenge is I went down to my basement. And because this coming weekend...
Hey!
There's a can. I am hosting a Game Fest, which is the first one I will have hosted in over a year and a half now. Jeez, almost a year and a half.
Outstanding.
And that is a year and a half of clutter that I've allowed to build up in my basement. And I say clutter, it's actually, I would say, projects. And thank you for resubscribing, Kuro. We like having you here.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Kuro.
That
makes us feel very special.
So as I'm going through the basement, one of my challenges is projects have progressed in stages throughout, and so there's kind of clutter everywhere. In the sense, like, I had moved my big monitor from here to the basement, stuck it up on the wall down there, which is awesome, although it's flaking out a bit. But in doing the space I put it for the arcade box, I had a 50-inch projection screen there that's now sitting on my floor, and those things I am now learning for the second time are really difficult to get rid of. And so I don't think I'll be able to move it out before Game Fest, and so I'm going to like slide it into a corner somewhere out of the way. But then I've got like sewing projects and lighting projects and lots of 3D print project stuff. And
people say that I have too many hobbies, but man, you blow me out the water.
I was going to say, I've yet to find the person who makes me feel like my hobby list is small.
Todd, your backdrop looks great. I don't know if you changed your lighting or something, but it looks so, like, I can see you clearly now. I can see you clearly.
So, there is a significantly bigger amount of natural light.
That helps.
Because we are getting rid of a couch we have had since 3 apartments ago. And so we are trying to we will be making the ads in the next couple of days so that we can give it away
now,
because it is old and it's got a couple of scratches in the upholstery, and we've had a cat. We cleaned up the couch so we could take pictures of it, and I've got there's an old office chair sort of behind me a little bit that you really can't see in the frame, but we're gonna give that away this week too, because we are building a proper wardrobe inside our bedroom.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's something really good feeling about when you get towards a point with projects that you're clearing things out of the way, and it's you know, when you finally get some of that stuff done, it's like, it feels so good.
Hey,
right?
I can say there's something very, very good about moving across continents as well. I'm sure you experienced it as well, Todd. Because you suddenly realize there's so much stuff that you own that you don't need to own. It really helps you get rid of the chaff. I mean, there's a couple things you miss occasionally, like, don't we have a obscure cork opener, bottle opener, or something?
Don't you have a melon baller?
Yeah,
Melon
yeah,
baller.
exactly. Right. Where's that thing that we used to have? Oh wait, wrong country. And so that happens like once a year. You know, the rest of the time you're just like, oh, it's kind of nice not having crap everywhere.
Yeah.
But then it starts accumulating again.
That was the sort of the big thing about the Marie Kondo book, if you've ever read that.
No.
That her shtick was all about anything that you have now that you think you can't live without can be reacquired.
This is true.
So,
The only things you can't get rid of are things of sentimental value. That's the only thing that cannot be easily replaced. So
Yes.
I brought my guitar over. That's pretty much it.
I'd say for me, it's usually the thing of like photos is usually the big one. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. And it's a weird place for me because I am such a collector of things and memories, and items to me are a physical presence of memories. And so I have a lot of things around the house that I don't have active use for, but when I see them and I'm in a nostalgic mood, it's a direct connection to so many memories and things I've had. So there's value for me that way. And so I go through this weird sense of like, I really have to identify something as not being something I need. And I did that even just as I started going through the basement to get things ready for Game Fest, that there were some things, I think I had some failed prints and some stuff down there that was like, yeah, but when I printed this thing, it was this and this and this, or this is part of the project I was working on for here. And I was kind of like, but am I ever going to do anything with that first failed print? It was a good knowledge thing, but I think I moved past it. Yep, just trash it. Toss it, right? And
That's
slowly
healthy. Yeah.
finding the things I can get rid of. But I will tell you, for me, it's a big challenge to do that. That is tough.
So different for me, man. So different for me. Like I used to like the only thing that I used to kind of hoard was cables. I used to have like a cable box that had every single adapter and miscellaneous power cable that was for, you know, a beard trimmer that didn't work, but I kept just in case. I had another beard trimmer of the same type one day or what. And eventually I realized like I even had like cables for instruments that I no longer owned. Like I can't possibly use this, but I kept it just in case. And that was one of the things that I had to make a decision of coming here, and I'm so glad I left it behind. Again, there's like whenever I'm missing a cable now, I'm just like, oh, I'll just go buy it for $2 somewhere. You know, like it's not a big deal, and it's a lot less stress than me spending 45 minutes raking through cupboards of cables trying to find the right one, than not finding it anyway.
See, you just that's just an organization issue, Ken. I mean,
No,
it's
it's
one of
not.
those things.
No, it's not.
Because I have boxes of cables and things like that, and the challenge is, as much as it's probably a good idea for me to let some of those things go, I get just as much validation of keeping them as I do for getting rid of them, because every time I host a thing or when I've helped people, like, you know, I've given somebody an old monitor that to me had a little scratch in it, but she was able to use it in her office or at work for a secondary monitor that she needed. And it's like, well, for you, a 22-inch, you know, LCD monitor with a line down the middle of it is fine, and it's free. And here, oh, and what connection do you have for that? Here's a cable for it. Here's the power cable. Here's everything you could want. Now, and so for me, it's like a weird validation as well of like, I kept it. I didn't need it for all the longest time, but then when I gifted it on to help somebody else, I had it, and it cost me nothing. But part of it's,
it costs you nothing.
Part of it's,
Think of it
I've
this
got
way.
4,000 square feet I can store stuff, not including my garage.
Sure. But think of it this way: what if you had a yard sale or multiple yard sales over the next few
People
years
don't
and
buy
help clear
crap,
out?
man. I've tried that. People don't. Even when I almost give stuff away, I got my last yard sale. I got maybe $30 for stuff, and I sold piles of clothes. I tried to sell old electronics and stuff like that, and just nobody wanted half the stuff. And
Well,
so for
that's
me,
what eBay's for as well.
there is the time and challenge if there's a value for it. I've looked at some of those things. I think like for me, the challenge I run into is I'm so bad that even when it comes to cables, I know there's other purposes. If it has a USB type A connection on this end, I can always adapt the other end to like 4 different things. And I've done that like under the desk here. I took an old USB A that was frayed on the end or I didn't need the connection, you know, pulled it, bought out the 12 volt wire for it, and attached it to a fan to make from an old PC fan a USB powered fan to blow the hot air from under my desk out so the computer stayed cool. And so it's like part of it's the tinkerer in me.
Sure, and that's sort of hobbyist, and that's separate, right? That's not necessarily for the usefulness of it. That's because you enjoy doing it, I think.
Well, it's
But
because I can create
let's think about, for
usefulness.
example, what Bill Gates would do. If Bill Gates sees
Man,
that he has a USB cable that he could sit in for 2 hours and reconfigure, and it would save him a couple dollars. If he just spent 2 minutes doing his actual work, he would make about 10,000 of those cables worth,
okay.
right? And
So
there's a
Ken,
level of that to all of us. At your
Ken,
level, I think if you spent an hour to 2 hours working on a USB cable, if you
ah,
actually did something like that was, your own skilled labor, you could easily
so
afford that
but
cable
Ken, that's
10
the
times
problem.
more.
My own skilled labor that I get paid to do stuff with, I can't work extra.
Sure, but that's not my
So
point, though.
in my
It's
own,
still
so
like,
what I mean is anytime I'm investing in things that one I enjoy the process of doing, but also in just tinkering around with things like that, it doesn't supplement, or I can't exchange that time for additional work time. And so it's not like I'm losing money on it or anything like that. And so for me, reusing stuff I have is saving the time, effort, and money of going out and acquiring something, unless that thing that I'm going to work on takes so much time that it actually is kind of detrimental. So it's such a weird balance because for me, part of my joy in life is successfully accomplishing random little BS projects, the tinkering aspect.
sure.
And so
That's
for
what
me,
I'm saying. I think that hobbyist aspect makes sense.
but that's why for
sensible.
me, having all those things on hand to hobby with, to tinker with, is beneficial because otherwise, if I get a moment in my mind to say I want to do this hobby thing and I don't already have the parts or pieces to do it in my home, I have to now go pay and acquire for those things and take the time and money to buy those things new or to go try to find thrift or something like that versus just having them available because I held them for some length of time. And part of it is I don't have, it doesn't, because for me, there's no negative impact to keeping things on hand.
Well, that's different because to me there is. Like I'm not one to believe in the sort of almost spiritual feeling that comes from this statement because I am not in any way
No, I'm just
spiritual.
saying it
But
doesn't
the
negatively
following statement
impact
of
me having it. That's what I'm
sure,
saying.
but
Taking up space in the
what I'm
house,
saying. The
it's
statement
not.
of don't let you don't own the things. The things own you. Like I don't really believe in the sort of spiritually type side of that statement, but I do sort of believe in the sentiment, which is that when you own lots of stuff, the stress and the I don't know the weight of it on your shoulders is palpable. You can definitely feel it. And for me, that makes it impossible, right? To own too much stuff. And I prefer to have the stoic lifestyle and purge myself of excess.
Well, and that's the thing for me because it doesn't like hurt me mentally having it in my space, and it doesn't keep me from doing stuff having it in my space. And so having it in possession is not a negative aspect in my life. Where for a lot of people I know, especially people that have small spaces, having extra things becomes a challenge in their life. It actually becomes a negative draw because they now have to like prioritize what they maintain versus what they let go. And so for me, I don't have that issue much. And I have found that often, especially when I feel like I want a hermit and not go out in the world, I have so many things in my possession, in my ownership, in my house that I can not have to leave. Like, you know what? I'm going to go re-pick up that project, or I'm going to go mess with that thing, or do this, and I don't need to go anywhere or interact with people or spend more money. Like, I have so many ways I can stop myself from spending money because I can just say, like, and I, as part of the show today, we'll be talking about the Steam sale that's currently going on. That I can look at my digital library of games and say, Wayne, you don't need another game because when are you going to play it compared to this list you already have in there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. The same thing can apply for my projects at times where I'll look and be like, oh, I can get a 7th 3D printer because I want a large format one, but maybe I should wait and actually focus on the prints I have right now and keep doing that for a minute.
I mean, that just seems silly.
There's an element
why
of
do something not to excess when you can do something to excess?
yes, that is more fun.
Well, there's a piece that sometimes I feel like I should embrace that more, because that's actually my big challenge when it comes to like my gaming life. I feel like I really should just focus a game and go nuts and like forgo all other activities for a minute to totally get into a game, because I can't remember how long it's been since I've sat down and put just a focused amount of time into get through, especially story-driven games. And I feel like, man, that would be nice. And so, I don't know. There's all kinds of ways I could spend my time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was looking at something totally unrelated while you were saying that, and it made me chuckle.
Caught your attention?
Sorry.
No worries.
It did. I did one of those things in this game of EU4 that I'm playing that I try to do whenever I'm not playing in Europe, and that's sniping the colonialism institution from the Iberians, right? So what happens is every 50 years, starting in 1450, these things called institutions spawn, and there are conditions under which they spawn. So, for example, in 1450, the Renaissance spawns, and the Renaissance has to spawn in the Italian region, and it has to spawn, I think, in a capital city or a city with a specific amount of development in it, right? And then when it spawns, the province in the game that it spawns in automatically has that institution. And then it sort of radiates out from there. But everybody in the world who hasn't embraced the institution takes a increasing percentage penalty for taking technologies. So if you're behind in institutions, like it really prevents your technological advancement.
Interesting.
So the one in 1500 is called colonialism, and colonialism will spawn in any coastal province of any country that's discovered the New World, right? So the usual suspects are the ones that usually spawn it. England, France, Spain, Portugal are usually the ones that spawn it. Now, I've done a campaign as Morocco where I discovered the New World and spawned it in North Africa rather than on the Iberian Peninsula.
Okay.
But you can also do it if you play as one of the samurai daimyo of Japan and unify Japan fast enough. You can discover the New World from the east, and then spawn colonialism in Japan.
Huh. Interesting.
And I did.
So,
That's fun.
admittedly, is that kind of just you went with it with like the goal to knowing that was the thing and condition you could do, the goal to specifically bring up colonialism in Japan,
Yes,
because you're like, hey, I am going to do that.
The goal was to spawn the colonialism institution in Japan, and I did.
Nice.
And it takes a long time to make it around the rest of the world. And the penalty is 1% per year. So the first time that one of these institutions can spawn is on the 50-year boundary, right? January 1st, 1500. And then it can spawn on January 1st of each successive year. Well, once it spawns, it's a ticking 1% per year penalty for taking technologies, right? So the maximum penalty is 50%, but they stack.
Oh.
Yeah. So if it gets to be 1550 and your country hasn't adopted colonialism yet, and the printing press spawns, 51%, 52%, 53%, 54%, because you hit the cap on colonialism at 50, but now you're getting ticking penalty from printing press in 1550. So, I didn't look to see how far it had spread. I'm almost at 1600 by now, and it's that's always fun.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. It is time for us to get things started. You guys ready to go?
Let's
Ready.
All right, everybody. let's get this show on the road. Let me kick up this background so everyone can hear the intro, and let's get it going.
Hiya, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to ShowX Live with Ken in the student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to ShowX Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado.
Hey, wait a second. I'm on the show too, and I don't get any billing at all? Well, I know how to solve this. Soldater, Fremad, march! You're listening to ShowX with our favorite Scotsman Ken, our child of the corn Wayne, currently living in Colorado, and Todd, who now has an army of angry Norwegians at his back. Enjoy the show!
To the show. It's 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 27th of June, 2021. Today, we are going to get an update on some of our gaming options out there in the world through the potential of streaming. And so Ken has spent some time online and testing out some of these game streams. I actually went through today myself and checked in on a couple again to see how it's been, because I think the last time we talked about this was probably a little more than half a year ago, almost a year ago maybe, when we were looking at how game streaming was going then. So we're going to update a little bit of that today, as well as I think we had a discussion a little bit, some new technology that's come out that could cause some interesting questions in the industry when it comes to what we need or what we do for the talents of those behind some of the games we love. And so we will get into that as well. So how are you guys doing today?
I was great until literally 2 minutes ago. And then I started looking at what's on sale on Steam.
Wait, just a second. I'm going to say, if people saying robots, then let me do.
I was hearing it as well, not listening to the stream, but listening to you via Skype, obviously. I heard it too.
Okay, is that any better?
Yes? Question mark?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
I restarted the audio engine, so hopefully that'll clean things up a little bit.
Hopefully so.
Cool.
Let us continue. Yes, you just looked at the Steam sales and some of the things available.
I weep.
You weep?
I really do.
As in you're tempted, or as in you're disappointed?
As in my pocketbook is going to be weeping.
Insane. Well, it's funny because
there's just too much good stuff.
Yeah, it's been one of those things that I think in the past we've covered when there were times that the Steam sale went on, and we were kind of like, I don't know if there's anything I really care about. I could tell you right now, I have at least one thing sitting in the cart right now that I'm doing the whole back and forth contemplation on, and that because this weekend is Game Fest, the opportunity is there for one of those rare times when it all kind of like comes together.
Now is the time.
Now is the time.
If that's giving you guys issues, let me see if that helps at all for the audio for everyone else. I'll turn off the NVIDIA broadcast background and see if that doesn't clean things up for me. But yeah, since Game Fest is hitting at the same time as the Steam sales, that means people will be able to entice me further to do the thing like, oh, you mean you guys are playing that game? Well, shoot, that's 75% off. I could throw down $15 on that game to play with you guys this weekend. Why not?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? It'd be silly not to, really. I mean, think of it that way.
You would be silly not to.
I
mean, I've been looking at things. I've been looking at things like Risk of Rain 2. I've been looking at things like Streets of Rogue.
Oh.
I've been at, what was it? Outriders is at the right price.
Yep,
It's
I see that one right in front of me right now.
35% off, and I'm thinking to myself, that
I
wouldn't be
think
the
to
worst thing in the
myself,
whole world.
I said, I am struggling hard with the whole. I have to do the reality check to myself, the sanity check of, Wayne, are you going to play this game? And because there's a lot that
it's a
I
good
hear.
question to ask.
Well, dude, I hear so many great reviews of games, and people that had huge things. I look at the ones they say overwhelmingly positive reviews, right? And this many friends own this game already and have put this many hours into it. Damn you, Steam! And so it's really easy to look and say, well, I trust them. They like that game. I could probably like that game. But then I have to stop and say, but am I gonna play it? Am I?
So first and foremost, Doom Eternal
I did pick that up and already bought that.
Good choice.
is 67% off.
I finally
like it's 100 and it's like $19.
Yeah, I finally
right now.
caved. I finally caved and got it and started playing it because I was like, this is the game that you can max everything on a potato and still play and have it look gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a potato and it looks gorgeous, right?
Yep.
The 165 hertz monitor, just like, let's go 1440p all day long.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. And I'm really trying to decide if I want to get the add-on campaigns, the Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2.
Yeah, I haven't yet.
Yeah, and I think it's probably just going to be Doom Eternal. But see...
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that, and I look at what a lot of other people have been playing around me. So, like, a lot of people I know have been streaming and playing a lot of Sea of Thieves, and that's currently a third off. And it's kind of like, I mean, it looks fairly pretty. I don't know if that's my kind of game. So I'm mostly able to stay away. To answer Earthweaver's question earlier, what's sitting in my cart right now? Spyro the Last Dragon, or Spyro the Dragon. That the all 3 game remastered version that is sitting there for $14 right now when I loved the original 3 games. And I've been wanting to get it, and I'm sitting there like $14.
Ken's gonna have a conniption fit, but Witcher 3 Wild Hunt,
dude,
80% off.
That is one to get. I've only put an hour into that game really, and already I was like, I need to come back, and that's one of those ones on the list of, all right, I need to shut my doors, turn off anything else, not get distracted, and just put time into that game.
Funny you bring that up, actually, because I was talking to Ken Features yesterday about this, because last summer during COVID, that was her thing. That was her jam. All she did was sit and play Witcher, like, all summer. And it was the best thing ever. Like, she loved it. You know, she was working from home, and then when she wasn't working, she would just, like, at lunchtime, she would just, like, put the laptop aside, pick up the PlayStation pad, and start playing Witcher. And she had the best time. And she was like, I haven't played it in a year, and I don't know why. And we realized it's because Witcher requires a really, like, you can't, it's not a pick up and leave kind of game.
You gotta remember what you're doing.
You need to invest your time. You need to have a good solid, like, 5 to 10 hours to put in at a time. It's kind of like Skyrim in that way.
Yeah, it does help when you can sit down and dedicate a couple hours. Absolutely.
So it is kind of interesting. I'm looking at the Dark Souls franchise now.
Those are all supposed to be pretty good games.
Those are all on deep discount except for the original remastered.
Oh, interesting.
That one's still full price.
That's weird.
Well,
and that came out 3 years ago.
So here's a question for you guys. I don't know how I know I advocate, and so I hope others do, because this is also the beautiful time frame. If ever you have a birthday coming up or right during a Steam sale, man, is that not the best time to have your wish list up to date?
Oh yeah.
Because one of the other not negative things, but strategies that the Steam sales has is Steam is quick to tell you anytime a game on your wish list is at discount. And so when I have, I think, 54 games or so on my wish list right now, and most of them are on some form of discount. In fact, they have a section in the store, right? Your wish list. And you go through and you're like, oh, yeah, all these games I said at some point I kind of want to play.
Yep.
Crud.
Yep.
How many of those are on sale right now? Because I look like XCOM 2's on the list, and it's 75% off.
Mhm.
You know, Sekiro, Shadow Dies
Yep.
Twice, Game of the Year edition is 50% off, and that's one that I know a lot of people played and loved, and I think the aesthetic
Uh-huh.
fits my kind of game style, and so it's like,
Yep.
Wayne, why haven't you bought this yet? Followed by the whole like, but am I gonna play it?
Well, if you look at if you ever look at your Steam library, I think there's a false sense of progress, I guess, because you look at it and you think to yourself, okay, like I have maybe 100% two games out of the like 500 that I own or something, and that's just a false dichotomy, right? Because in reality, a lot of those games you'll get in like a humble bundle, or you get because
Yes.
they're in a pack, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't actually care about, or you get some of them as sort of like if the internet dies forever and there's a cat. So I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a well documented problem that's going to happen in the next 20 years or so, of satellites that are going to start bashing into each other because of all the debris in space, right? So we are going to probably lose the internet at some point in the near future.
No, because I'm going to
Yes.
be able to start my
Right.
company where I clear space debris before then.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll solve it. Okay, neat.
Oh, dude,
We're
I have
all looking
seriously
forward-
been looking into that.
We need it. We really genuinely
Because
need it.
eventually it'll be at a point where you it doesn't matter what country's paying you, you just pay to clear a space or orbit line in space, and that's what debris for whatever country, and you basically have an option of other countries to tell you no, that's our satellite, we need it there, but if nobody claims it, you say all right, I'll clean it. You put a few stations in different orbits at heights above the Earth with remote drones on them so that they take what they can back to be recycled, repurposed, and then sent back to Earth in a way that they can be reused.
Dude,
And other things
I've
you
been-
send into a degrading orbit so they burn up in the atmosphere. Not that I thought
Yeah,
about
I-
this a lot, but I'm
I've
just
been
trying
looking
to.
at this a lot
Certainly not.
myself.
I'm just
I've
trying
been
to.
looking at this a lot.
I've just been trying to
Um,
tip the scale on how do I make it profitable enough to actually make it a business. I'm like, I'm close.
That's a big part of the problem because you need to get something up there which is super expensive, and there's lots of ways to. Anyway, I could talk about this for hours. And
I know.
We probably should go into this, but basically, that is a genuine problem. People out there, like, but the governments and the companies don't want to actually bother trying to clean and prevent something that's going to cost them money. They'd rather make profits right now. But the problem with capitalism is very short-sighted.
Every corporation out there that has stakeholder that is public.
Is incredibly short-sighted. Anyway, so because of that, there is a quite a high chance at the moment that we will soon be going back to 1940s type technology, and all of our phones will suddenly.
We
And the
have
internet might not
we have cables under the ocean, and until all the sharks eat them, we're okay.
But we really, really also rely on satellites really heavily, like even just for the coordination of everything. But anyway, my point being that your Steam library with all those games that were, back up one day I might get to, you might actually get to them one day because of that. But otherwise, I think the vast majority of the games in there are just maybe one day if I ever feel like it. They're not actually meant to be,
This
I
is
will
my
play them now.
goal of retiring to Vietnam in the next month, such that all I have to do, like the amount of money I've saved and selling my house and equity on that, I never have to work another day in my life. Because then the rest of my career, like my life is finishing off my Steam library. That's my retirement.
Yeah,
it is.
now we're talking.
It is going
Yep.
A to Z down the stream. The Steam library. Install the game, play it front to back, stream it. I don't know. Maybe that'll make a supplemental income of $10 a month, and then eventually play all currently in my library. Looking at how many games do I have? Oh, come on. Dude, I know it's 400 something.
I can see it now. You can call the stream Old Man Wayne, and it's a 40-year stream.
It's just a constant go. Since my library, although I have it categorized out, is 680 things in my Steam library now.
Oh, that's insane.
That's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Anyhow, so yeah, no, this is actually, and that's one of the things, right? This is actually a solid sale. So I do recommend if you've been looking for a title to play lately and just haven't really paid attention, check it out on Steam. There is a high likelihood one of those games you've been looking at is on sale at a significant discount. One that may be worth, especially if you're in the market for looking for something to play. You can probably find something right now and save yourself a bunch of money.
Yep.
So do it. Damn it, Wayne. No, see, now I'm looking at my list again, and I shouldn't.
I know. I need to stop this immediately.
See, the strange thing with me is, at least in, I don't know, in the past like 2 years, the amount of gaming I've done has just dropped dramatically. Like, I still love gaming and I still do it when I can, but like it's so. Not only is it the frequency and the quantity has been reduced, but when I do play, I never get to play with people because I can't ever organize anything. Like, the idea of ever raiding again is impossible to me. There's no way I could dedicate like 3 hours to a game every week at the same time. No way. I just could not do that. And so when I think about Steam sales and stuff, I'm almost like scared of the idea because I'm like, great, so I can buy games that I can never play. That's a great concept.
I mean, that is a real factor. This is why most of the games I look at now are single player ones that it's like, am I going to sit down and just play myself kind of ones, and trying to find some of those, because the multiplayer ones I have are fairly straightforward. I play Warzone, League of Legends ARAMs, and that's kind of the majority right now. And people can pull me into like, oh, we're actually going to do some mining in Star Citizen. Let's go see how many times it glitches out before we give up. And like, I will, so it's difficult, and I can't touch games like Valheim, even though I really want to, because everyone else I know, the people who I would play with, are the ones who focus so much on that game that the couple hours a week I play, I'll come back and the community castle thing will be so big that I'm like, gosh, I don't even know what's going on here anymore.
Yeah, just sort of bumbling around, feeling like a noob. Yeah, I get that.
I mentioned I hate feeling like I'm being dragged along content, that I'm just being Sherpa'd along, that I want to be able to experience myself. And it's part of the reason I can't do MMOs is because I don't have the time. So whenever I try to play with people, they've all done the content a dozen times. And so they're just like, hurry up, come on. And I'm like, but I've never seen this. I want to experience it. And I don't want to hold people back because, I'm on my 4th hour ever in, this content. And they're like 403 already. So it's a challenge, but it's all right. But as we get into this, it's funny, right? We're talking about all the ways you can buy games at deep discount today. But additionally, there's an option for people to play games. Yes, Ken?
I was going to say, be careful, because we're talking about, obviously the topic of the show today is going to be streaming games.
Yes.
And I think the default assumption with this is that means that you don't own them, and you just sort of, you pay your subscription, but that's not always the case.
That's the thing to talk about, right?
Require you to own the game.
It depends on the service. It very much depends on the service. And that'll be part of today's discussion, because not all services are created equal. Now, one thing I do want to talk as we bring over the discussion about streaming services is because it's an interesting use case, essentially, in that in most streaming services, what you're doing is paying for, or in some way monetizing access to resources outside of your house, that you're basically linking to some network of servers or things like that external to you that are playing the games, doing the processing. And what they're doing is basically sending you a video feed to your computer, and you are providing inputs back to them. And in doing so, you're gaming in the cloud. You're gaming through the internet, such that the only resource really being pressed on your end is your internet connection, giving you the data, and your visualization to be able to see what it is you're playing. And so a reason that is important is a value for it is that it can allow people with limited resource when it comes to their hardware to be able to play the latest, greatest top games and features without having to spend and invest thousands of dollars in your gaming hardware. And so that's really where there's this existence of where game streaming can happen. I say this where the use case that I know of someone personally, other than you, Ken, who uses it every day is my older brother. He plays, I believe, through Shadow PC, where he basically has just an old, like the hardware in my brother's household is all pretty old, an old laptop. And it's funny because when I was there for my birthday week and went through, they had like really nice widescreen monitors and monitor stands and mics and everything set up. And then we're plugging in potato laptops into them at the base and just doing everything through the internet.
Yeah.
and it
I'm doing the exact
mostly
same
worked
thing.
all
I
right.
play on a Mac.
Yeah, I mean that's the other option. If you decide to not actually use gaming capable hardware or OSs, then that's another reason.
Yeah, so then you can even play Windows-based games on your Mac without actually having to even do anything with Wine or similar. You can just play it remotely,
Yep.
and if you have a smooth enough internet connection, it's seamless. It truly is.
And just to head things off right at the get-go, even if right you're spending like some of the top cost services out there, which I think roughly is about $25 a month for like the top end ones. And this
Yeah.
is silly, right? That's $300 a year on
Sure.
your gaming access. And when we talk about a lot of times the kind of hardware expense that you get from computer gaming, easily a computer gamer can spend more than $300 a year. You know, if it wasn't in
and that's not even top range.
right, if not everybody has a personal development fund to potentially invest in their local hardware to be able to do stuff, right?
And equally, not everybody has the internet capabilities either, to be fair.
Well, so that's the back
Right.
and forth because Kuro said, right, bandwidth caps can kill streaming as well as
Yeah,
your
for
internet
sure.
quality. So we'll get into a bit with each of these ones as to how this all went. As my brother chimes in, if only Shadow.net did not go bankrupt and some of the risks involved with all this. All right. So setting the base stage, right? Ken, could you give us a little bit of feedback or update on what your view of the current status of stream gaming is today?
Sure. So I think the last time we talked about it, which was I think last year,
Yeah.
we were sort of talking about this being a futuristic kind of thing, and where it was starting off, and there's a lot of beta programs around, and that's still kind of the case, I would say. I think that we're still in the early days of game streaming, much like how Netflix started off with doing DVD and streaming back in the day, and it was sort of like they were putting they're dipping their toes in the water kind of thing. We're not quite at a stage where it's done yet. We're not a done deal. A lot of all these libraries are lacking major components, or don't support enough hardware, don't support enough operating systems, or don't support enough games, or even controllers. For example, one of the problems that so I should probably say early on, the one that I use pretty much not daily but weekly at least is NVIDIA GeForce Now.
Okay.
That's their sort of like streaming platform. And it's one of these ones that functions by games that you own. They don't support everything. Like, for example, they don't support World of Warcraft, but they do support a lot of games out there and a lot of different providers. So they have some Origin support, they have some Steam support, and so on. So I think that right now the state of this is still growing, it's still changing. We're not sure where it's going to be in 5 years' time. I would expect that by the fact that this is actually cheaper, as we've kind of already generally agreed, this is actually cheaper than a lot of the other options out there for actually purchasing your own hardware. I would suspect that this is going to become more and more popular while the internet is strong, and for probably in the bigger cities and the likes. I don't think it's going to be popular for those who live in rural areas or anywhere in the US, generally speaking, where their internet can be, capped. It's not very good for people with internet caps.
Well,
right? 'Cause
so
you're going to be streaming in potentially 4K constantly while
well,
you're gaming.
nah, I don't know about that because here's one of the things, right? Currently, there is maybe 2 services I found that you can actually find any actual 4K streaming content.
Yeah.
You know, even GeForce Now, when I played with it today, was 1080p, and things like I think it was PS Now is only 720 for the most part, and so that is a consideration. But I would expect this if you really want to look at your bandwidth usage. Depending on for people today who currently perhaps consume a lot of streaming services for movies and shows, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, all those various means to connect content, it's similar in that way. That the amount of data you're receiving is similar to what you're getting in those kind of stream services. So if you're
Sure.
able to watch, 100 hours of content in at least 1080p a month, then you're probably able to sustain that on your current internet connection with gaming. I think latency is a big issue, like it is with any gaming, because now instead of where you can play locally, you have to deal with the cloud and online for your latency, and that's even just for your input. So if you're running with any kind of latency over about 50 millisecond, you might start feeling it. But even then, it's considered compared to
I wouldn't do anything that's reliant on Twitch, like Twitch Reflex.
And that's a potential challenge, right? And that's very dependent on your latency. And I say this because I did play as one of my demos today on because I played Stadia and I played GeForce Now this morning when I was playing.
Oh, great.
It.
Okay.
And on GeForce Now, I think I played Skullgirls. And
I don't know
so
that.
actually, it's a 2D fighting game. It's actually
It's
really
anime.
damn
It sounds
good.
anime. It has the word schoolgirls in it.
Skull, Skull.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it does have a hand-drawn look to it for the way the fighting game works, and it's actually a really solid fighting game. But it was one of the ones that, because GeForce Now I have in my library and therefore was able to jump in and play it. And that was my concern, right? Is because fighting games tend to be those twitch real quick. Not that I'm pro level and therefore I can't speak to the competitive side of it, but I was able to play it comfortably in a way that I did not feel like it was online. And I was playing a fighter game, and I was like, all right, that's pretty solid for this service. Not all services created equal. For that one's good.
No.
And caveat, I have, according to my provider now, 1.2 gig down. Since I supposedly got an extra 0.2 that hey, look what we did for you. Yeah, because you ever get that. Right. That's just
At 3 a.m,
right.
you get that.
Thank you for the marketing email to hopefully give me a warm fuzzy.
Yeah.
But I am in also a very populated area with a fairly robust internet structure, so my ping tends to be pretty consistent and good. And so for me, a streaming service is actually a pretty consistent experience regardless of the service. But yes, that can be a consideration for the types of games you're playing as well. But sorry, Ken, continue.
So yeah, I was just saying that I've played with GeForce Now, which is one of the ones that's been around for a little bit longer. I've also played with Stadia, which is also a kind of long-standing one. That one's owned by Google, so you would expect it to have quite good infrastructure and a good back end and so on, and potentially good deals with games companies out there to get licenses to be able to run all this stuff. Because not all of it's innately supported, right? I mean, there's a lot of games that, again, Battle.net, Blizzard, they do not want people to be able to do this. They want people to, if they ever want to do anything like this, I think they want to hold their cards close to their chest. You know what I mean? They want to be able to maybe do a service like this themselves one day, I guess, which is why they don't want anybody to be able to play their games. So you can't play Diablo, you can't play Hearthstone, or on any of the streaming services, as far as I'm aware.
Well, no, that's you say any of the ones that are built in to have their own store and front end to them, because any of the ones, then there's like 2 or 3 out there that are basically just cloud access to a remote computer, will be able to play any gaming service you have, even Battle.net, stuff like that.
This is true. If you're actually just connected to another computer, I think a lot of them kind of obfuscate it through servers and such.
Oh yeah,
so
well, I'm just saying the ones that you normally are renting a PC, a remote PC, tend to cost slightly more and have slightly different kind of plans. Because, like I said, that was what my brother was doing, is using one of the ones where he's actually accessing his saved state of an installation of Windows on a cloud resource. And so, because it's just you're running a Windows PC on the cloud, you can access any service out there, essentially. And so that's one of those nuances. But the ones that are focused on gaming, like GeForce Now, PS Now, Xbox Game Service, Stadia, all those different services, those are all specific front ends to games. And so those are the ones that you aren't going to find Battle.net on. And you aren't going to find, in many cases, like, well, I guess some of them do link to the Epic Store and some of the others, but you're not going to find like GOG or something like that. And so there are some limitations to all the streaming services, and one of the big ones is content. And for any of those game-focused ones, one of my challenges, because even like GeForce Now, and well, that one being a big one, and what was the other one? But regardless, the ones that linked to my Steam library, it was like sweet, because I just said I have 640 some games on my Steam library. Of those, I think I saw 80 in average available on a streaming service.
And that's a big problem, right? One, you have to own the license already, which is already a bit of a kick in the teeth that you're paying to just play your own games. I mean, you're actually paying for the hardware, right? But still, you'd think that, you know, like Netflix, you would hope that gives you access to stuff as well. So it's already better the kick of the teeth. But then you also there's only you can't even play all the games that you own. So you're paying for hardware that's very, very, very limited, and that is rather annoying. And I found that with GeForce Now. I wanted to play Skyrim recently. I had a bit of an urge to play Skyrim, and I thought, oh, I wonder if it'll support mods. I'm curious to see how this will work. It wasn't even in the library. So even though I own Skyrim and Skyrim Legendary Edition, I couldn't play either of them through NVIDIA GeForce Now, which was irritating.
Well, and to piggyback on that, one of the challenges I ran into, advantage actually to reverse that. One of the advantages I did run into is that one of the nice things is if the service does have it, the nice thing is they have games, usually at least the one I saw on GeForce Now was that I saw one game that said it wasn't available, even though it was in the list. It currently wasn't available. I forget what the message was, but the ones that were, I was able to just click on one and get it started relatively quickly and didn't have to go through the process of installing it myself, essentially, because they have instances of that installation of that game already available on their servers in the cloud. And so, in a way, there were some games that it was faster for me to get into for a game that I don't have currently installed on my PC through the streaming service than it would have been for me to download it myself, install it, and start playing it. And so that was kind of the novel thing I thought about of like a neat process. Another thing that is a big advantage to a lot of these streaming services is that it can give you a lot of flexibility in where and how you game. Because if you do have the ones that support it, and this is one where I think PS Now is one of the few that has no option for mobile / I think they do have PC, but not mobile. But a lot of the services...
GeForce Now does support mobile.
Well, GeForce, no, PS Now, the PlayStation one, Sony one.
Oh, I see, sorry.
I think they're one of the few that doesn't have a mobile version. But a lot of them allow you to play if you have either the appropriate controller like Stadia or through a Bluetooth controller on many mobile devices, you can play a stream through your phone, essentially, and still be playing a AAA title that you would almost... I mean, otherwise, you would never be able to play on your phone. Arguably, whether a phone is the right, place to play certain games. But hey,
I actually tried that this week. I tried to play Far Cry 5 on my phone, and I thought that's freaking cool. Like that's a pretty modern game, and being able to do that is incredible. But then it said no supported controller detected, and it just closed out.
And
so I'm guessing you need to have like a PlayStation pad that you Bluetooth connect to your phone or similar, which is understandable. You can't expect it to work innately on a phone when there's no control scheme. They'd have to make their own control scheme for each game to make that to work, right? Which is a bit of a pain.
That reminds me, you know what I should try, but I didn't. I should try to do some of the streaming services on this ridiculous pad that I have for the submarine that I can fly. Because it has the built-in, basically, Xbox controller on it. It's an Android device. So this would almost be like a perfect use case for those streaming services.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, because it is just a dummy terminal.
Mm-hmm. See, now I'm going to power this on and take a look at it as we're doing this.
Yeah.
But so Todd, what's your experiences with game streaming services? What have you tried?
Honestly, I did not try any of them.
Okay.
Truthful, I am. This is going to be another one of those situations where I'm the Luddite of the group.
Well, but what you can provide,
because we had this discussion 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Do I really need to play Assassin's Creed Odyssey on an airplane on my phone? And the answer is, if you're a grown-up, no. No, you don't. You can read the newspaper on your phone on an airplane. Are any of us ever getting on an airplane again for business? Right?
I am desperately hoping for it.
I will be, undoubtedly.
Me too. There's a ton of Europe that I'd like to see, right? And I feel like I missed out on going to Toulouse, and I feel like I missed out on going to Spain, which were all conferences that I would have been going to had they not been canceled due to COVID.
Yes.
So, sure, I'd like to get on airplanes again too. Even still, like I said 6 months ago, I've got the Nintendo Switch, so I can game on that. I have tons of cheap ass mobile games on my phone that are good for mindlessly blowing the 90 minutes that I'm on an airplane between Oslo and continental Europe.
Sure, but like, there's no reason why you can't also just do more than that. Like, basically, the option is: do you want more games and games you're maybe currently enjoying on a computer? Like, you could play Europa on your phone. Isn't that a neat idea?
No,
Why?
no.
Well, so
No,
the one that I throw out that's not necessarily because I can understand the mobile conversation, especially during travel, where it may not make sense to have your desktop or console level games available to you. But what I do like is the idea of when you get to a destination, or so saying you're in your hotel and there is downtime where it's like, man, I got 5 hours to kill because I got in early, there's nobody else here, and I got to go to sleep at this time. So I either go out drinking because nobody else is here yet, or whatever, right? Just somewhere where you're at a destination for a time frame that you don't otherwise have already scheduled for activity. That it might be nice to, especially if you have a mobile device that you can HDMI into the television type thing wherever you're out, so that you now are playing on a 50-inch screen your whole game library, if you will, or the games that you normally play. So bringing that experience there, or for like one of my cases being, I've got the massive gaming PC and mostly play in here, but for those instances I do want to play something that is best experienced with a controller, and I want to go do it on my 65-inch OLED screen in my living room. Being able to do that without having to go buy a new, like a second gaming PC or buy one of these current generation consoles, because it's still what I already have, basically. And so I see, maybe not, like I said, for my use case all the time, but for those people who already are doing it, even like for Ken, if he's already experiencing it for his PC gaming, but then can enhance or take that gaming experience to the television and play with others, I can see the benefit of having services like this. And that's
yeah, that's fair enough. I guess it's one of those differences between Europe and the United States. Like every time that I've gone someplace for a conference and I'm like, oh, I'm getting into this place early, so I'm going to get to go do X, right? Or, we're going to finish up at 5:30 and there's nothing else going on, so I'm going to go do whatever, right? Those plans never survive contact with the people that you're at the conference with, ever. So I've had plans. I went to a conference in Stockholm where I was like, oh, there's a casino 3 blocks away, and I'm going to be dressed up, inside the dress code for the casino. I'm going to go play poker in a casino in Stockholm. Nope. No, there was not time. Like there just wasn't. Same thing in Utrecht. There was a casino within, I think it was 5 or 6 blocks from the hotel that we were staying at, for a conference that I was going to, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna get into my hotel. The airplane flight will hop public transportation. It'll be real quick. And then I'll be in my hotel room and we'll check everything out and make sure I understand everything. And then out the door, like, again, I'll already be dressed up for it because I'm leaving from the office essentially to get on the plane, right? And so there's going to be time. And no joke, every time that's kind of situation has been like, okay, I'm going to make these plans. I'm going to have this goof off time that I'm going to have just to me. I'm going to do this stuff. And inevitably, either you're going to see somebody on the plane because they're taking the same flight as you, or you're going to see somebody at the hotel that are going to be, hey, we should totally go out to dinner afterwards, right? So I ended up, in the Stockholm case, I ended up going to a Spanish place and we had paella.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I know. Right now, I'm like,
which, again, 100% worth it. Right. But, so I understand that there could be value in that particular use case. I guess my point is, at least since I've moved to Europe, like that particular use case just doesn't rear its head. Now,
Fine, that makes
I realize
sense, but
that your mileage may vary, and that's
yes.
fine.
Well, let me give you another example. I used to travel down to Ipswich 3 months a year, not like for a straight 3 months. Usually it was like a week or two at a time throughout a year. So it's not as if I could pack up my gaming computer and all that stuff to travel to a hotel for a week, where I'd be working 9 to 5 business, but I'd be living in a hotel complex. I wouldn't be near anything interesting. Like the people I know lived there. They weren't there to like go out and do conferencey things like I do when I go to conferences. They were there to
Sure.
work. They had families and stuff. They weren't willing to go and hang out every evening.
Sure.
So I often found myself twiddling my thumbs. I ended up playing old like RuneScape because I was like, oh well, that's all I can really do in this crappy work computer. And if I had something like that, like what's available now, then oh my God, that would have changed my life. I would have had so much I could do, so many interesting like video games that I could play. I could have made anything out there, That would have been amazing. Sitting there playing Tomb Raider or something, I couldn't even imagine that.
Mm.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, in this conversation, my brother Babs brings up a point that he has in there that he says streaming games is also nice as a truly mobile LAN party. Kids can pull together gaming PC experiences using TVs running latest Chromecasts and some wireless controllers to play in the same room as the kid with the gaming PC.
That's a
And
nice
so
idea.
it is one of the things about the streaming services that I see as flexibility, which is pretty darn cool. And hey, Babs also bringing up, I used to carry a Dreamcast with me when traveling and living in hotel rooms. So I definitely had a thing where there was a time when I traveled for work where I was out for training for a week. And because I was similar to what you're saying, Ken, being out there for a week, this is actually the reason I now pay $8 a month for a Crunchyroll, is because while I was out there, I had nothing but my phone with me. And so my activity each night, because I could only, again, I was out there for a training episode where I wasn't with anybody I knew. And the few people in town that I got to see were like 1 or 2 nights during that week that I was out there. So the rest of the time when I'd get done for the day and everyone's done, and I've been in DC, I've seen all the monuments, I've done all the stuff I want to do in the area, and I kind of just wanted to go back, lay down and relax in the room. I watched anime on my phone for like 3-4 hours a night, a couple of those nights, because I was like, I got nothing else to do. I ate, came back to the hotel. What am I doing? If I had had a gaming service that I was able to stream and take with me, especially, and this is where I think the real advantage can come in with some of these ones. If I could have taken my phone, Bluetooth a controller into it, and then connected it via any kind of device to the television, oh, that would have been an entirely different experience. That would have been I'm a captive audience for a week here where I'm probably going to have 20 plus hours to dedicate to something. Maybe I'll pick up one of these story-driven games and play it here because I won't have the other distractions and such. So for me, I'm looking at just the potential flexibility. But I also will caveat, I'm not paying for any of the services I'm currently doing. I got access to GeForce Now and other things because, one, I bought this damn video card that I have that totally by itself negates my need for any streaming service, and got access for a year for NVIDIA GeForce Now, right? And I'm actually a little annoyed because one of the new services that's just came out as beta, it's one of the few times Amazon's got me where it's like, man, I pay for Prime. Why don't I get this? But their new service, Luna, is just coming out, and it's in beta right now. It's, $4.99 a month?
Which is pretty damn good.
It is, but I don't know all the details for it yet. I need to go look it up because I could start it, but it's like a 7-day trial. And if I'm going to do that, I want to do it when I can actually play a bit. But for me, much like you, Todd, I don't see a streaming service paid for in my immediate future because I invest a lot in the hardware I have access.
I'm going to tease. So take this in the spirit in which I give it. But how much of a degenerate do you have to be not be able to not game for 2 days while you're at a conference?
Yeah, but it's not 2 days. It's usually like for me, conferences are at least like 6 days plus travel. And like I said, sometimes I travel for more than that. Especially when they're trying not, what universities are like and what business is like. They try to cut down your expenses massively. So instead of the direct flight that would be $1,200, they'd rather you take three connections that takes 30 hours to travel. So yeah, I want to play games on my phone.
So again, this is a Europe versus America problem. America, yes, I understand that. I totally get it. And in Europe, there are direct flights everywhere, so I can go from Oslo to Amsterdam or Oslo to Berlin or Oslo to to lose. You know, I can get all that stuff. I can get all that stuff direct, and I'm not really saying it for those reasons. I'm just you know, I'm so here's my struggles, right? I put myself in a position in my real life that I decided that gaming was going to be my primary hobby, and it is my primary hobby, so it's the hobby that I spend all my money on, right? My disposable income. Overwhelming majority of my disposable income goes to gaming, okay? I am home enough that the use case for a streaming service would be, you know, maximally 5 days a month, maximally.
Okay.
And at that point, it's like, okay, is gaming my primary hobby, or am I addicted? Right? And I'm not trying to say that anybody is or isn't. I'm just saying, like, if I can't set gaming down for those maximal 5 days a month, there are other things to talk about.
Okay,
I
sure,
understand.
but-
I understand the flexibility. I buy the flexibility argument. I don't buy the inclusion argument at all. That oh gosh, the kid without a gaming PC can game. That has not done gaming a service. Again, I realize I'm in the minority of that opinion. But
What
I've
do you
never
mean
bought
it's not done gaming a service?
the inclusion requirement or the inclusion argument.
Well, why not? I don't understand why not.
Communities get worse the bigger they get.
I disagree.
That's
I
universally
disagree.
true. And I know I'm the only one who believes this. But we saw it, right? We saw the total demolition of the World of Warcraft community between 2007 and 2010. And the only thing that really changed was the player base went from 7 million to 12 million. Was that good for World of Warcraft? It was good for Blizzard. Wasn't good for the game. Is NeoGAF's existence or Reset Era's existence or some of the subreddits that exist out there, are those subreddits' existence good for gaming overall? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think Patricia Hernandez failing upward to the position of EIC at Kotaku is a good thing for gaming. She's great for the diversity checkbox, but she doesn't know anything about video games. So when did stop being elitist? No, I am an elitist. I'll wear that. I'll wear that on my sleeve. And you know what? I've never ever said that I should be able to play basketball at an elite level, that I should be allowed on the court, right? Ever at any court.
Yeah, but
at
you're
any
also
point,
allowed to go out and
ever.
play basketball on the street with your friends, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But that's the point. Nobody's saying that you like just because the number of people who play World of Warcraft has increased, it doesn't mean that they all need to be the best. It doesn't mean that it has to be
so
to the top tier.
But here's the difference. I would never go to the basketball forums, if such a thing existed, and tell them they need to change the game because I can't play at the level I think I should be able to play at. Right? And every video game on Earth has those forums. And there are people who do post that kind of stuff.
Of course there are. But I think there are people who would do that.
Why is that good?
It's just okay. The more people you bring in, it's going to be on both sides, right? You're going to bring in a lot of good people, a lot of people who are fascinating, interesting people that bring in interesting thoughts to the game and real community aspect, and people who you want to hang out with and you want to play the game with. There has to be, and I'd say that's maybe not the majority, but I'd say there's a lot more of those people who you wouldn't mind playing the game with at least, or want to play the game with, than there are those who you wouldn't want to play the game with. I think it also depends on the type of game. I mean, World of Warcraft is, generally speaking, I think probably ages 30 to 50 mostly these days, because of the fact it's an older
especially
game.
classic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think it's bringing in many, like maybe in Pandaria time they brought in a bunch of younger folks for a little while, but I don't think they have for a long, long time. Um, but if you want to go play with a different age group, like there's games like Fortnite out there, like go ahead, right? I still think that generally speaking, the majority of people who are more people coming to the game are more of the same people coming to the game.
Oh, okay, think about the conversation that we've just had. Not this one about the streaming services, but the one before that. We're three of the people probably in the top 1% of the most able to spend money on video games, and yet we spent 20 minutes salivating over games on deep discount. So if we're not spending the money on these games and we're in the top 1% of people who could, I mean, what's everybody else going to do?
Probably the same as what most games companies do, depending on whales, people who will go out and buy it on launch and spend huge amounts of money. I don't think we are the main target, and for good reason.
What makes you say that? Like, to me, we are the target audience. We're the enthusiasts, right? And maybe not enthusiasts of a specific game or franchise, but we're enthusiasts of gaming as a whole, which to me, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this way, means that I'm not going to be restricted to FPS or MMO or JRPG or action RPG. Like, it doesn't, or to a company. Like, I'm not stuck in that Nintendo paradigm, or I'm not stuck in the, well, Ubisoft made it, so I'm going to buy it, right? I'm just going to show me a good game, right? And I will at some point spend money on it, right?
Sure, that's the thing, though. Surely, streaming services, we are the target audience because we are the ones who are enthusiasts. We're the ones who wouldn't mind saving money in the long run while also still being able to play your games and having the added ability of being able to play it elsewhere on mobile devices, on your toilet, or you could sit and watch Netflix on the couch with your wife or your husband, and at the same time play your favorite game on the phone. That seems like a great deal to me.
Okay, I just, yeah, like I said, I'm alone in this one. I realized that going in, and I just, yeah.
I mean,
This is just going to be one of those things I think we just agree to disagree on.
Which is okay. For me, I'm more focused on the technology, the thing that allows for me the flexibility, right? And this goes into a lot of what I do with work and stuff like that when I go into meetings about UIs and stuff like that, where we have two very disparate groups who have their idea of the workflow that they want to do in the world. This is a real world thing I'm dealing with right now, where we have a group in one location who they do their work this way and they have every time, and the developer sits in their basically in their backyard. And then us who sit separately and have a very different workflow and how we choose to do a similar kind of mission. And in those conversations, the things I always advocate for is never to like poo-poo on the workflow that those guys have and to lose my mind about the fact that they're doing some things that are back asswards and insane to us based on our workflow, where we legit have real world questions of how the F do you guys have a job? What is it you are doing over there? You're blicking nuts. But they are so backwards in the way they do some of their work that we get like it is a mental struggle for us to comprehend how they do what they do. And yet in those meetings when I talk about what we are advocating for on my end, it's never, oh God, you guys got to stop doing that because you're wrong. My advocation is always, okay, cool. That's what works for you. That's great. In addition, we really find it important that you at least make sure that we have the option to do things this way so that we can do our job. We're not going to tell you guys can't do your job. We're not going to do that. But when we build this new tool, when we make this thing available, we're just going to make sure that we can still do our job in the constraints of this tool that we all have to use. And so I'm always an advocate for the maximum options and availability for anybody to kind of do what they want, because that flexibility, I think, potentially benefits everybody. Because in the same
I agree.
sense, even though, like, for me, I don't have a use case to pay for a streaming service, I'm only going to play with it because I have access to it through other means, meaning I got it for a free year, so screw it, I'll play with it here or there. But when the time comes for me have to, like, make the choice on, do I pay $10 a month? I can already tell you what the answer to that question is going to be. Because I do not like extra subscriptions. But
well, that's the thing, though. I think there's also a question of how the economy has changed over the past few decades, which is, back in the 90s and maybe in the early 2000s, I think people had a bit more disposable income in the middle class, so that if you wanted to get into gaming, you would look into your savings and be like, oh yeah, I could spend a few $100s on that or whatever, and then you do it. I think now, if you look at people of the same age group, no, not literally the same ones who've grown up, but people who are now in their 20s, and they look into their savings and they say, "What savings? The price of rent, the price of everything else has gone up so drastically, while minimum wages stayed effectively the same in most of the Western world, at least in the US especially, that I don't think we have the kind of disposable income that we used to have. So I think people who want to game and such and want to be that is factual. That's a
I've got more disposable income than I've ever had.
Yeah, but you're not in your 20s right now. I'm not talking about you.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I'm talking about people who are.
I'm just upper middle class, but
yeah, exactly. Like you're definitely not the people I'm talking about right now.
I'm right there with you. I was going through my mind, going, well, actually.
But
I'm in the same boat in that sense, I guess. But
to continue off what you're saying, though, Ken. I was actually going to piggyback on one of the reasons that streaming services can be such a benefit today. And this is even more exasperated than it was when we last talked about the issue. But it is that of scarcity of hardware and the ability to invest. Because today, I don't know the store you can go to buy a current generation console. I don't know where, even if you had $500 of disposable income in your pocket today to go buy a new Xbox Series or a PlayStation 5, I don't know where you go to do that.
No, so what you'd do is you'd go on Linus and you'd do one of the $500 budget PC builds.
Potentially, but even then, you still run into the problem of availability of video card resources. Because one of the things Linus Tech actually brought up in the same conversation was, if you're one of those people who've built a PC and the one core thing you're missing is a discrete video card. So you've built everything else, but you're not willing to try to invest 3 times the retail value of a video card to get a 1660 for a freaking $500 bill, which is insane in my mind, because that is not what that card is worth, right? If you're not getting a 3080 for basically $500-600, then you're in this bubble of insanity that thankfully is hopefully going to end here due to crypto mining stuff in China being shut down. But if you're in that state compared to last year, right, where you've built everything but spending a year service on a streaming service to keep gaming with all the modern gaming things until so that you can wait, right? Because that's one of the things you can actually bring up. I can spend $300, and that's again on the high end. In reality, it's about $150 or less for a year of one of these streaming services.
Yeah.
And I can play it on my great PC with a potato video card for a year. Yeah. And I now have the luxury of on my finding the deal on a video card where I can actually, I'll jump on every time Best Buy gets stock. And when I get it, now I can start playing locally. And if you're using something like GeForce Now, where you're already investing and paying for the games that you'll play anyways, the difference is now you just transitioned from that streaming service to playing it on your now fully built PC, the same game you had with the same game saves, the same all of that, and you just transition your experience locally. And so that's another piece of the flexibility I think is pretty neat with it that I've seen recently, where I'm fortunate, right? I got a 3090 sitting in here. I ain't got nothing to complain about when it comes to hardware.
You have no need for a streaming service.
Yeah, I have no need. And so for me, it's
Wayne. You've made the hardware argument, but if you take the cost of not the current PC that's sitting on the floor that actually cost me $0, but that's another discussion entirely. But the one before this that I put together 10 years ago, essentially, right? That cost about $1,200 in its original incarnation plus one graphics card update along the way, right? And forget about the 27 or 2080,
Yes.
I guess is what it is. Forget about the 2080 for the time being, right? But if you take that and spread it out over 10 years, right? It's roughly what a streaming service would be.
Well,
Yep, except
month
that
to
you
month?
would still be on the most current,
so you're
best
correct,
hardware, right?
and that's one of the actual things that you kind of can balance into what
I,
a streaming
Ken,
service
I
can
guess
provide.
that's my point. You don't need the most current best hardware.
You're right.
You could play Cyberpunk 2077 on an i7 970, right? And the reason why I know that is because I did,
You're right.
right?
But to kind of further that conversation, Todd, about what can be done, one of the things about a streaming service that is an advantage is that every however many years they're recapping all their hardware, or they sometimes tier it based on how much you spend. And so the advantage is, while you may consistently spend that $150 a year for your gaming hardware experience, you always are getting the latest capability of gaming with that. And such on GeForce Now, that includes RTX, that includes potentially up to 4K gaming streams, depending on what you're doing with it, where you don't then theoretically ever have to pay for upgraded hardware on your PC. And that's one of the things. In a way, I actually like the streaming service discussion because it's another aspect of the quote-unquote console war, console versus PC kind of conversation of gaming. It's a whole nother category, cloud gaming, right? That it can be, you could be a console gamer, you could be a PC gamer, you could be a cloud gamer. And theoretically it's kind of a hybrid of the two almost, because you're getting almost PC experience of some PC games, but with a console kind of interface. So it's kind of a weird hybrid. But
And the other
cost-wise,
really neat...
well, and here's another one to that. The nice thing about a cloud gaming service versus a console one especially is console ones also basically require a monthly subscription to be able to game online with your friends.
Yes.
You don't have that then with a cloud base. If you actually relate it to the same, it's almost like the cloud-based gaming's free compared to what a console gaming experience would be. And just so I could show, just so I can show, although I have to figure out something with the control scheme on this, I was able to get in here and get GeForce Now running. And this is Tomb Raider, which one is it? One of the modern Tomb Raiders, running on this actually fairly old Android device. Looking really good.
Yeah, that actually looks pretty good.
Like,
that's pretty nice.
It's playing really nice.
That actually looks pretty good.
And telling you, like, in person looking at it, I'm like, huh. But for some reason, the game controller on this, because Android device isn't coming through as a native game controller, so I have to figure that out. But I was able to log in, get it playing, and it's like, huh.
Still though,
that's pretty sweet.
That's pretty schmexy. I will admit that. Guys, I don't know. I'm a lot of this is my own personality, right?
Yeah.
I compartmentalize stuff a lot, right? So work time is work time and playtime is playtime, and the two don't intermix. Although that's one of the things, those barriers have sort of broken down thanks to COVID too, because the work area and the play area are the
have
same
become
area,
one.
and the work PC and the gaming, the play PC are the same PC.
Yes.
Because why would I log into some terrible laptop whose screen is this wide when I have
all of this in front of you?
This, right?
Yes.
Why would I do that? So, we're not going back into the office until at least the 1st of September.
And if I had my ability, if I had any way to keep the world changed, it would be to never force people back in the office other
Oh.
than required essential activities.
So, and again, I'm really sorry to all my friends in America. I really am. But at least one of our clients is going to do an evaluation of everyone's job and decide who does and does not need to come into the office, and if they do need to come into the office, how many days a week.
Nice.
And
actually.
it is my very desperate hope that the answer to that question is no. And if the first question is no, and if the answer to the first question is yes, then like once a week.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible thing. I mean, I think one of the big problems is we've got the gambler's fallacy going on here, which is all these companies, not only do we have the traditional thing of everybody thinks you have to be seen being 9 to 5 to actually be a productive
any
employee,
value?
which is it's just disgusting in itself, but we'll put that to the side. But there's also the gambler's fallacy of, oh, well, I've already invested in this office and all these power supplies and computing supplies, and we already pay for security, and we have these maintenance people coming in doing cleaning and everything. It would really be a waste for us to have this big office and then not use it. It's a stupid fallacy, but they've already put so much money into it, they don't want to waste it, right? And I hate it, because that's going to mean there's going to be so many people having to travel in for no freaking good reason, even though studies have shown in the past year that for the majority, not all, but for the majority of people who've been working from home, their productivity has gone up and they work less hours. So they're producing better work, right, in fewer hours, because they're like, oh, I want to get this done so I can go play PlayStation or go hang out with my kids.
Let alone
or
the
whatever,
real world,
right?
the real world interaction that's come to fruit that people who have been working from home, it's been captured in meme and other things in the kinds of jobs where it does work. That people have been more productive while working less hours, while being able to break up their work structure into whatever is comfortable for them, saying like, oh, it's the middle of the day, it's nice out, I think I should take a walk and then come back and maybe I'll work a little later or do something different. That everybody's work-life balance suddenly was insanely better and people were happier, more productive. Yes.
Yep. So
ShowX recommends companies get on board and move with the times.
Total non sequitur, because I see he's in the chat. Serpensor, the Mistress of Giggles, and I read Quantum Mechanics for Babies to each other yesterday, as well as Newtonian Physics for Babies.
Wow,
So
I didn't know those books existed.
I just have to say thank you, because oh my god, the most amazing thing in the world. And we're reading these books, and they're legit baby books. They have the really thick pages that can be chewed and gum and whatnot, but it's legit quantum physics.
Dude,
General
I love
relativity for babies.
I
and
love
just
that.
Looking at it like, this is space time, and I went, yeah, actually it is. This is a mass. This is a bigger mass. Mass is warp space time. And it's just like, yes, all of that is true. That's all correct.
That's awesome. I didn't even know those existed.
There's a whole crap ton of them. There's a whole series of them. And it's good stuff. One of the comic book shops in Oslo actually sells them. Bookstore, comic book shop sells them. So probably going to pick up more of those.
Oh God! If that wasn't, this is going to be such a side note, kind of random thing. But if that isn't more of a reason that I would want to have kids than anything else, is to find means like that to extend information and continue my geekism onto another generation. That's awesome.
This is a mass. This mass has energy. This mass has no energy.
This mass. Great. This mass is your dad after a day at work.
Yes.
No. Yeah. Oh, that's great. No, good segue or side note to Serpensor for that one. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, thanks, buddy. I appreciate you.
As we're doing, actually, I'm realizing we went past break and I didn't stop us. But I'm going to throw out there for Ken's benefit. I just finished book 2 and I'm getting ready to start book 3 of the Codex Alera series.
Oh, brilliant! That's so funny. I was thinking about rereading that today, actually.
I am very much enjoying them. So that's
great, isn't it?
It really is.
It is my favorite fantasy series of all time, and I read a lot, right? Like I read way more than I should, and that I've read that whole series 3 times, and I'm thinking about a fourth.
Wow. I will say,
Wow.
I love the magic system. It's one of those silly things where I guess if I ever see Jim again, I'll be able to be like, all right, dude, I actually have relevant questions now.
Yeah, yeah. No, if I ever see him, I'm gonna sit him down like, why are you focusing on the freaking Dresden Files when you have this piece of like perfection with like Roman army culture inspired like world of fantasy with such interesting unique races, and I'm like, and you're focusing on like some freaking space wizard, like what you doing, man? Like, go back to the roots, go back to the real thing there. Like, urban fantasy is so much less exciting than what you've got here.
I like them both, but it is a great fantasy. For Sir Pencer, it is the Codex Alera series. Is this one, and it is so
Yeah.
good. Like
By Jim
I
Butcher.
legit like I remember the first book. The pacing was such that I almost couldn't take a breath towards the middle and end of the book because something else was always about to happen. I didn't want to put it down. Right? It is pretty
Yep.
damn cool. So
It is one of the few series that in my adult life, I used to get this a lot as a teenager and as a kid, but in my adult life, I partially hyperventilate reading because I got so excited. That doesn't happen to me anymore. Like I've not had that in so many years, but that series still gives it to me a little bit because it's the growth and success of the main character, and you feel it, and it's just those moments of extreme success, and it's so satisfying on a primal level.
all right, I'm going to force us a break so that we can take about 3.5 minutes here to catch a breath, use the loo or whatever it is you may need to out there. And I'm going to play us a remix from Dark Souls since it was one of the things that came up on the sale list for Steam sales this week. This one being from Phonetic Hero called Conflagration, OC remix song. And so we're going to be back in just under 3.5 minutes. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to continue conversation a little bit about this streaming service. And I want to get into, I think, that second half about how some people might be out of work here in the future when it comes to game design and game development. So let's get into that. But we'll be back right after this, everyone. I say this, and then somehow my streaming thing gets completely jacked here.
As it likes to do.
Well, it's suddenly, like, as I'm trying to play the thing on Winamp, it's like, what? No. Oh, there's what happened. It completely lost what it was supposed to send to. And so I'm like, what? There you guys go. We'll be back right after this.
listening to ShowX on btwproductions.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. As I was just looking at... Hey, there it is. The Quantum Physics for Babies.
Hey,
I like that. It absolutely has the entire for kids look to it. The big corner thing.
This is a ball. This ball has 0 energy. All balls are made of atoms.
True.
There are neutrons and protons and electrons. An electron could be here or here or here. But an electron cannot be here. Or here. All electrons have energy. This is so awesome. All electrons have energy. This electron has the most energy. This one. This electron has the least energy. There are no electrons with 0 energy. This energy is quantized. An electron can take energy to jump up.
See, that is definitely going to the level of quantum on it, not just...
And it must give energy to fall down. This amount of energy is a quantum. Now you are a quantum physicist.
Done. See, everyone on stream, you can now say you are a quantum physicist.
I'm a quantum physicist.
Oh, that is ShowX's service to everyone today.
Congratulations, everybody! You can collect your diploma, your
on Microsoft Paint,
baby degree in quantum physics by sending your check or money order to
to the Patreon.
Or to the Patreon.
Yes. You too.
Now, Ken, that's not true. My kid is not going to know more about physics at age 0 than you do. They will be, first they have to be able to speak. Object permanence is one of those things that we're gonna have to overcome, and I don't think we're gonna overcome all of that by the first birthday. So,
hey, don't sell your child short before the opportunity even exists.
I know.
You do enough of the symphonies in the symphonies playing at night into the belly, and speaking.
The kid pops out and says E = MC squared.
Hey, right? You just put a constant stream of Neil deGrasse Tyson or something at night.
No, Carl Sagan.
Oh, there you go, Carl Sagan. Yeah,
Carl Sagan. We do it old school here.
I support that. Yeah, kid comes out and instantly looks for the stars, but no, that's great. So,
or has this really funky nasally accent. Here on the Isle of Greece, there was a man who dumped a copper globe called a water thief into the water and picked it up, and the water ran out. And then when he plugged the hole at the top, the water didn't run out. That man's name was Democritus. We miss you, Carl Sagan.
Yeah. True loss to humanity, right there.
Isn't it great how so many of the people that we can idolize are people who shared knowledge? Even if it wasn't like those even that weren't those that contained the knowledge, but they just were the ones who regaled. Like that their voices that we associate with the things we learned were so great.
Just like how we enjoy actors and storytellers, even though they're not the ones who necessarily took part in the tale initially.
Oh, I got blasted one time by not blasted, reminded fervently by the voice actor. What is it? Oh shoot. he does a bunch of stuff too. I see him all the time. And yeah, he's the one. Rob Paulson, the one that does Yakko Warner and bunch of other voices. Because I meant to form a question to him about one of the songs about how it came about, and I inadvertently tried to give him credit for the song itself, and I didn't mean to. When he's like, "No, I did not create the song. This is so and so's song. I'm just the buffoon who gets to act it, right? I just got to sing it."
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, I mean, I know that. I just framed the question wrong, but in that way of saying that just because he was the voice of it wasn't mean he had anything other than to provide the means for us to experience it, but wasn't the actual mind behind it, right? I did want to tie a bow a little bit on the streaming service conversation, simply to say that it is potentially even more of a viable option today, and it's something I'd be curious if anyone out there, other than like Ken has done it, my brother has definitely done it, embraced it. If anyone else out there in our community has embraced or taken part in doing any of the streaming services, because I think while in my own life and Todd's life, like we don't see it as something that really extends to us. However, I have definitely seen opportunities where it makes sense to me why someone might invest a fixed amount of money into a service that allows them a somewhat premium experience compared to what other options might be out there. People who can't camp online stores or in front of Micro Center, things like that, to get the hardware, they might want to participate in newer activities if they're running on old hardware. I can see where it makes sense. So I'd be really curious if anyone else out there is using any of the streaming services and what you might be playing on them. I know there's more out there. There's, like I said, Luna's the one coming up, and I've actually run into others like Remoter, REMOTR, and a bunch of other services that I didn't know existed last time we had the conversation. And so this isn't a trend that's necessarily just going away. I see other companies that see the potential of however they
the
apply
fact that Amazon's getting in there as well, that's there's some elbow shoving I think going on right now.
It's that question, right? I think Amazon maybe has a better track record than Google, where Google will be like, hey, that's a good idea, and then I'm bored of it, and it drops off
I thought you meant
next month.
ethics.
Oh, ethics, no.
Say,
No, ethics, you got still that whole petition to keep Bezos in space when he goes. But no, it's the idea that, you know, whether there is a market for it and people see the profit and thus what we might have available. But I would be curious to know who has looked at streaming services. Are you looking at it? Or something you plan on doing? I mean, if I can get it to work properly on this tablet thing I have, you know, I might even play some, because that could be my access to, I'm going to bed and I want to play some of this game real quick instead of having to, you know, just rely on watching a video on the phone or something. I love the flexibility that it could provide. Granted, I don't see myself paying for this kind of service. So I am curious, though, for others out there who might be using it.
I just thought of an extra use case for myself, because this made me think, like, if I've always sort of assumed that at some point when I have some spare cash and, you know, in the distant future, when I have that kind of money around, I would love to buy a new gaming computer. I'd love to drop like $3 or $4 grand on something really fancy. But now that I think about it, if there was a streaming service that actually supported all the games that I want to play and seems to have not just, you know, maybe something that emulates a desktop computer rather than just supports a few games, wouldn't it be better if I spend, you know, just 20% of that money and maybe like $500, $600, but get like a supremely nice projector or big TV screen and a dummy terminal that would allow me to play the game in some beautiful quality, some really enjoyable video audio experience, but then never have to actually pay for the processing and just pay monthly? And then that's, if it also comes with a library of games, I would do that.
Well, that's the thing. I see a lot of use cases for it. I do. It doesn't apply to me, but if I was just coming into gaming and all I had known in the past was console gaming, and I'm still sitting on like a PS3, and suddenly I have the opportunity and the time or whatever to start exploring more things in today's, especially hardware constraint environment, man, to be able to go and say, look, I can pay, even if I just try it out for a couple months, $30 to $50 for a service. And maybe the service, you have to buy the games itself and you own it on your Steam account or something like that. And I can now start experiencing things in higher quality, in, you know, all the modern aspects of it. I can see the compulsion to do that. I can see why that would be very attractive. You know, I'm still, part of my mensa, I'm still old school. I like to have things I own, I'm in possession of, I can use for things beyond. It's also one of the conversations, you know, admittedly, I get into the PCMR thing all the time about, Well, yeah, consoles are garbage because that's, of course that's a biased opinion going in, but I say it because it's like everyone's like, "Bruh, console, I can just plug and do this," and I was like, yeah, for a service that automatically auto scales it down so they can maintain the frames per second, you're not actually getting 1080p, let alone 4K. You're really getting like 720 plus P, 960p, all the reasons I can bag on a console. But then I also throw in, plus console, all you can do is game. On my PC, I can do everything that I can do connected to a device and have, a computer behind it. Not just game. I mean, I primarily game, but I can do a full podcast. I can check out and create and do all these other... Anyhow, so I always get into those kind of conversations as well.
I do software development when I'm not gaming.
Right? I can do all kinds of things that a console becomes far more difficult to do things on, that arguably some stream services would also be much more difficult. So there's a whole cadre.
Okay, but along the same lines, the arguments that we've been making tonight, but if I only use my PC as an entertainment device, right? Assuming that my console's got the hard drive space and I can hook up hard drives to a console and use that space, it is possible, right? And hard drives are not hard drive hardware is not nearly as hard to come by as other types of hardware, right? You'd agree with that. You can get a 1 terabyte Western Digital Elements drive for the equivalent of $50 here in Norway. So it's not that stuff's not hard to come by, right? If you're only using the PC as an entertainment device, then given hardware scarcity, the console is the right answer, right? I mean, it just is, and especially if you were one of the lucky ones to get your hands on current gen.
Yeah.
Right. And we're not going to get them in Norway until the back half of 2022, but we do have a PS4 and it does still work. And now that we've got cable connections for the controllers, like 4-meter long USB cables, right? So that you can plug the controllers into the console itself. The only thing we're really missing is the hard drive space to have everything on a drive that the PlayStation can access, so we're not constantly trying to figure out
offload
what games
and
we're gonna have on the console at one time, right? But you can have Twitch and YouTube and HBO and Amazon Prime and Viaplay and all the things. See, while we were in the break, that was the other thing that I was thinking about, right? Is that we all cut the cable to give the finger to the cable companies because they were screwing us on the cost of TV, and the whole landscape became fragmented. And instead of one subscription that costs $1 million, you now have to have 8 subscriptions that cost $100,000 each.
Oh, I hear you. Oh.
So you ended up. So you're actually right. You tried to send a message as a consumer to the people that were screwing you, and you ended up getting screwed worse.
Well, I won't say worse yet, because at least with the fragmentation, I can still choose which services I do and don't follow. And so my net cost is still lower than what used to be the one all-in-one cable subscription, because my personal consumption is very focused. And so for some people, it's all right. I do agree, though, that the market, because damn those, distribution services being savvy, if not behind the times, enough to finally find a way to, pull everybody's money again. For a little while they fell off, but then they found their way back. So yeah, I agree with you in that sense, that the fragmentation still led back to where we're almost back to paying the same, if not more in some cases, which sucks. But
in $30 for HBO, $12 for Prime, or $15 for Prime. I think $15 for Viaplay, $15 for Netflix. Right? I'm at what, $75, and I haven't hit all of them yet. Like, if you pay for Hulu, I think Isn't Hulu up to between 15 and $25 a month now if you want
I'm not
the
sure.
premium?
I've lost
stuff?
most of those, and I dropped Hulu the moment they added ads to your pay subscription.
Oh, dude, I totally feel
yeah,
you.
but
Ken Features still has it because she loves it, but I can't stand those
I
ads.
can't.
So they're getting you every month for the subscription and they're forcing you to watch
Dude,
stupid?
They
Well,
did
you can pay
that.
extra.
They did that
You
almost a
can pay
decade
extra.
ago, or whenever they first came out.
Yeah.
They only did it where the pay subscription was without commercials for like the first year and a half or 2 years of it. Because I used to be like, oh, well, I won't pay and I'll watch the commercial and I'll watch these handful of shows I care about. But I'm doing the commercial, right? And then once they went to the model where it doesn't matter how much you paid them, they still gave you commercials. I said, screw you, company. I can never support you.
That's that thing. I thought if you paid the higher amount, you still got no ads.
You did for a while, and then they started saying, but we'll give you these ads. They found a way to bring it into everything. Well, it's the same thing that I rabble whenever I go to a movie theater, and they give me ads before the trailers. Like, I'm willing to sit through the trailers because that can have a fun aspect. But when I see the cola commercial done in the theater prior to the film, I'm like, wait a second.
I have a soda in hand.
And you didn't give me a discount on it, damn it, for me now watching the commercial about it. And that was always my complaint. I was like, wait, that means if I get here this much earlier, I should get my food and concessions for half cost because I'm now supporting it by watching the ad you got paid for to show me in front of this thing. But wait, you didn't give me that benefit, so I don't want the ad, right? And
I know we all know fine well that does not go to the consumer, the ads.
Oh, no.
No way.
So I mean, all of these are issues with the way we consume and our things are distributed to us these days, which is a challenge. But I am curious in general. Feel free, everybody out there, to kind of to let us know a little more long format what your thoughts on the streaming services. Is this something you've ever considered before? Is this something you maybe use and you have more details on? I'd love to find out more. Email us in at vtwshowx@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. To keep things going about kind of the conversation we've had, Ken threw right this morning a new article at us that I had not seen, but I found quite interesting. And for me, I found it quite interesting because this is something that I think I've seen talked about in other aspects prior. This is a new twist on it for me. So this article comes to us from Input Mag. And in a way, I see this as a natural extension of technology and what's already been happening that I just had not seen applied in this way. So essentially, the tagline of the ad is, voice AI is scary good now. Video game actors hate it. And so, the article just briefly goes in to say, fans of the... game modder Niche, or was it Nikic 340 recently released a Witcher 3 PC mod called A Night to Remember. The mod takes off after the events from the Blood and Wine expansion, with protagonist Geralt of Rivia once more taking up the hunt for Oriana. Fans of the game were stoked to have a new, albeit unofficial, add-on to The Witcher 3 to play. Voice actors and some others observers, however, were less than thrilled. You see, A Night to Remember not only features new content, it features new voice lines. Specifically, the modder used AI trained on voice actor Doug Cockle's speech to generate brand new voice lines for Geralt, the character he portrays. Quote, "If this is true, this is just heartbreaking," tweeted Jay Britton, a voice actor with credits in Divinity, Original Sin 2, and Pathfinder. Quote, "Yes, AI might be able to replace things, but should it? We literally get to decide. Replacing actors with AI is not only a legal minefield, but an utterly soulless choice."
No, okay. I'm very much biased. I work in AI, right? Like I'm also very much of the opinion that screw corporations, and they would love to find any way to squeeze money out of people. And so I think having things like AI which can generate content, be it voice, video, game, or whatever else, is a good thing and pro-consumer in my eyes. I do feel sorry for voice actors in a sense but this doesn't mean that they're losing jobs. It just means there's an alternative. It's competition. It doesn't mean they'll always lose out to it. And like I said in the chat earlier today to you guys, I see this as being what handcrafted goods once were, right? They used to be the norm. That doesn't mean that they are the norm anymore, and doesn't mean that they're no longer used. Handcrafted now has a higher price attached to it because you're getting artisan goods instead. And I see that being the same thing one day with games development. If you're an indie developer and you can't afford to, hire freaking like the voice actor of Superman for your game, which is completely reasonable, and you can obviously you can't afford that, and you shouldn't be expected to. Why wouldn't you just use an AI to generate a voice? That seems perfectly fine to me, especially if you've already purchased something like The Witcher, which includes, by the way, all the audio and access to the audio of voice actors. Why shouldn't you be allowed it? You've paid for it. You're using stuff that you've paid for. Why wouldn't you be allowed to train an AI on it?
Well, I don't know if you'll have a contrarian view or not, Todd, but I will throw up the discussion point. Oh, go ahead, Todd. Yeah, I see.
No. Throughout the discussion, I love this.
Well, because
I am 100% in love with this. Because how are you, as a dimwit activist on Twitter, going to accuse a game dev of racism if all of their voice actors are AI?
Oh, racism is a very big problem in AI, actually, because AI can easily be
the conversation there. Yeah, depending on what you source your learning algorithms on, it can be. There's other issues there, but I understand what Todd's saying. It's more about the conversation that's come up in a lot of voice work through other media, which is that actors portraying a certain type of character in a media, where the opportunity potentially for an actor that is actually of that character's origin or nature, or whatever, portraying it instead of some other actor who perhaps gave their, rendition as it was. And that you've seen actors give up roles because of some of that concern, and you've seen other people potentially hired specifically for it, right? And that's a discussion that exists around there, and Todd's saying that if it's all AI, then who's got anything to bitch about?
That is exactly what I'm saying. Moreover, what do Kotaku and Polygon have to write about?
Well, so here's I think
this is really fascinating, because I think what this could do is, instead of voice actors selling their voices to actually do the work, they could sell the model.
Okay, I was going to say, you're actually getting ahead of me right there, Ken. Yeah, because one of the challenges is arguably the voice work itself. Because what you said, Ken, about once you've purchased the game, therefore you be able to. No, you bought a license to play the game, not to create new content off it necessarily. And so I'm just saying, even legally, how the things are written, especially if what you're providing, and this is where mods get in that fun gray area, is if you're doing anything to profit off of the creation of new content based on what was originally content provided by the creator, that's copyright. I agree with this. And there's issues there, right? If you do it and you release it for free, that's the gray area where, arguably you can do whatever. And thus, in this specific situation where this mod came out, as long as he's not making a penny on it, I do support the idea, then go nuts with the AI. Now, as soon as somebody gets paid for this work that is essentially interpolating and taking the original voice actor's work and thus potentially monetizing or taking away from what they could make, there's a problem there, right? Now, like you said, Ken,
replication inherently transformative?
No.
There is discussion on that. There's discussion on what that means. Because transformative, there has to be a certain percentage of transformation and what it's based off of, and that is somewhat squishy. That the definition
of human interpretation.
Well, that's why you can do parody, and something where it's like, I am taking what was originally your structure, for example, of a song or a movie or something like that, but I completely cast it with my own people, my own lines, my own stuff, but I'm using the nature of what you created, and I've transformed it. Every good porn out there that's based on a movie has been done this way. But let alone Weird Al and everyone else who does transformative works that are a comedic level, stuff like that. There is a piece there. But the problem is doing an extension of what already exists, almost in a way of creating additional content in the same vein, I think would have a struggle with the transformative argument. Because
so then the argument is it isn't the person's voice. It's an approximation of the person's voice.
And that's where,
right?
Well, and you see people do that, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? you can have people do a likeness of, right? And I think one of the comments made up, I don't know if it was Babs or someone, Babs does it, saying like, does this mean I can still get Sean Connery voiceovers? Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The idea of it, though, is that you've always had people who do voices that are mimicking an original actor, and they can do it and legally get away with it, right? And you've seen that done in ways in movies and stuff like that, or people, especially in games that represent real people, and that it's not the real person actor, especially famous people, right? It's not the actual president who voiced it, but they want to use the president's likeness in a game because it's a public figure, and they're doing something like that. And there's lots of little legal things around it. What's interesting about this, and one of the challenges that comes with AI and the current technology we have, is that we're getting to a point where the ability to discern between original and what has been made up is getting really difficult. And so,
yes, and I think that's a whole different.
So the technology's outpaced the law, and so the person who makes the really good AI gets sued, and Frank Caliendo's fine.
I would argue the AI person doesn't get in trouble. It's the person who uses it and tries to sell the work that gets in trouble.
The person who tries to imitate somebody else and makes them say something and claims that it is them. Somebody who basically commits fraud. That's different.
And that's where this is an extension of the challenge of deep fakes, right? The ability now to create video representations of things that can be passed off as real. Now, that's the potential negative of. I'll flip the script here and I'll say the positives. Because much like you said, Kenneth, the ability there, you could change the model. In essence, you can now have a voice actor work into perpetuity or whatever. Someone who's passed away could continue to generate new content. And be it the legal means or whoever owned the rights to could sell the ability for someone to create an AI version of and have a licensing thing. Boom. Done. I can now pay for the licensed AI voice of Sean Connery to do these kind of things in my work, right?
1977 Peter Cushing.
You pick, right? That's the beauty of it.
The cool thing is, instead of you having to pay 20 grand to a voice actor to do something for you, you can instead spend $20 for the rights to a model, which, by the way, is a tiny little thing. You don't need to have all the data of every single film and TV series that person's ever done. You just need the model. And that's a really small little thing in comparison.
It is, and I will tell you the business model associated with this, that I'm now giving away for free because I'm sure somebody already has, is you become the company that provides the already generated built model such that a person literally can write the script and it just acts it out, right? You do that in combination with the deepfake video aspect of it, or if you still want to maintain, and this is where it gets really creepy or kind of technically interesting, like metahuman technology that Unreal Engine has, where you can now create digital actors that still look digital, but are damn realistic and already have the anchors for how to animate them and such built in, and you tie that to a voice and stuff like that, you can now artificially create really complex scenes and content and have it cost a fraction of what it used to. And especially with hardware today that I could actually render out a movie these days on my damn desktop PC compared to when Pixar used to have to use a stack of Cray supercomputers to do it kind of level, right? That you're going to be the potential for some really compelling and, dear to my heart, graphically and auditorily really great content is huge. Because this steps even further, that if I'm not trying to license actual actors' contents, but the ability for this to translate into just more realistic, completely computer-generated voice. So I need male actor 4 with a baritone, and I can now make a new voice that is completely generated based on AI, but sounds very realistic because I'm trained off of a whole range of humans, and I just need a type. That's compelling. And now as a studio, I don't even have to hire a voice actor of any kind.
And you could try different things out. Let's try the lines on this guy, then that guy, and can you retweak it? Can you maybe change I like that guy, but let's change the model slightly so it does this instead. Maybe he has a lisp instead or something, right? And that would all be doable.
And for someone who's trying to make like a content that can have multiple outcomes, such that now I'm playing a male protagonist, a female protagonist, a non-binary protagonist,
cool.
things like that. Again, you write the script once, and when person
I love
chooses
that.
the kind of thing they are, it can act out naturally in all of them because it can generate the appropriate voice inflection and stuff based off the kind of character you are. And if you took it a step further, that the AI now can be attached to like the mood of the character or the
or
fact
how
that
damaged you are,
right, or whatever,
yeah.
right? And such now that you're always getting what seems to be accurate representation of your characters or your NPCs versions, and think about the ability to now extend every game to having voiceover. Because I still play a ton of games that have limited voiceover, arguably because of budget and time resource, to now extend that to I can just auto-generate it all. I just define the kind of character, and here's a whole bunch of words, and go.
Yeah, but Wayne, you know what's going to happen, right? All of the budget that you saved on voice actors is going to get dumped into cutscenes and splash screens.
Well, but there's also the argument that you can do a lot of that in engine real time. And if you have these kind of techniques with, you no longer have to pre-render. And now you just get that even closer to seamless transition between what I'm controlling gameplay and the narrative being displayed to me, and it all just flows. Which I'm just saying, it's just the potential of the technology to actually give us all an amazing experience.
Can you imagine you're playing an MMO and you type into the chat what you want your character to say, and on the fly it generates that into the whichever actor out there, how you've chosen your character to be. So you could suddenly have Scarlett Johansson saying out loud what you typed in the chat.
Oh god,
so that
this is gonna be the worst thing ever.
You could even choose like moods or whatever. Oh yeah, for ERP isn't going to.
Oh come on, the industry that's going to capitalize on this the most, like always. Because it's new tech.
Porn.
Yep. It's the porn industry. You're going to be able to match up anybody in your fantasy world with anybody and have a very realistic representation of whatever you want.
That's true.
I would never do that. Oh, you say that now.
It's right.
You're going to do that in spades.
Right. This is what was the freaking actress, the Asian actress, the Fry in Futurama wanted Lucy Liu.
Oh.
He wanted a Lucy Liu bot or whatever, so he made a Lucy Liu bot that was her, but imperceptibly different until she one day realizes she's a bot and leaves him or whatever. It's exactly that, isn't it? That's where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like how Babs, man, if everyone starts picking Max Headroom avatars, my ears will bleed.
Oh. Yeah.
I just laughed because that was actually the main AI used in Ready Player One for.
Well, and that was the one part of, like, I'm sort of on Wayne's side for most of that book, until it's like, well, we needed an '80s reference for an avatar, so it's Max Headroom, and I'm like, nope, axe this kid. Like blow up the trailer, Sorrento. Like just end this kid. Well, end this kid, and have the protagonist of the story be some kid that finds like the Wade's crappy Oasis console buried underneath like a mile of rubble of where his stack used to be before it was blown up in some freak accident. Like, yeah. Like using Max Headroom as an avatar is enough to warrant death. Not
there were other opportunities. I mean, it really should have been Skeletor, but I guess
that's a good choice.
If you're gonna choose something,
Moon-Ra.
There you go.
Yes.
So, and it's gonna be interesting, right? Because we've already seen AI attached to various forms of entertainment, which is really where this all is stemming from. You go back to, Mika, the Japanese AI singer that's been around forever. I say Mika, but it makes me double check. It's not Mika. It's, darn it. I say Mika because we have, was it Hatsune? There, Miku. Thank you. Hatsune Miku. Thank you, Serathis. Who's been around forever doing concerts and stuff that is all generated based off of not necessarily AI, but as the music of it, the voice of it was generated from computer only, the Vocaloids and such. So it's not like it's a new concept. And we've already seen the inkling of this in the media where we have now artificially generated, and this has been for a while now, concerts with holograms, right? With the technology to make someone appear that there's someone who's passed away and things like that and presence and such. That all of this is a refining of tech that's going to make it in the near future almost indiscernible from reality in some forms. And it's going to be interesting to see. But what I do like about it is from the personal selfish consumption perspective, I can see a lot of lower income production houses and like arguably those things that create amazing content but don't have the budget behind them to do the big whiz bang graphics or sound budget, being able to do that, just plugging in, paying for a plugin essentially, and getting this high quality output that now their content of game can really shine through because they're not being held back, but they're being able to participate in the same level of visual appeal that other games have and such. And now you can really focus on the content of the game, which you could do before, but it means it's not a limiting factor. For people who don't like the view of perhaps pixels or such like that, the pixel art type stuff and things. So I'm really curious to see where it'll go. And I think of this also for games like Star Citizen, where they got Mark Hamill to do his re-roll of all this stuff, that if they added this technology to a little bit with it, and so you get the acted scenes in there, and use some of this to kind of blend things in between so that now the in-game engine, when there's things that happen on the fly, seem more natural, because you're using AI to interpolate some of the voice acting into what you're experiencing. Oh, man. The potential experiences to have things feel natural and like you are getting a custom-crafted experience all the time, I think I think
there has to be some ethical, check boxes that need to be ticked off. If somebody has passed, for example, and if they explicitly said, I don't want to be, whatever, then that should be respected, generally speaking. I mean, I don't think it has to be enforced by law or anything, but that's why I say the word should be expected. It should be respected, because just like any wishes, it doesn't become law just because you want it to be. And same with most of these kind of ethical considerations. If somebody says they don't want to ever be in porn, you should not be doing that. Absolutely should. But you can't. I don't think the problems that could occur with this kind of AI means that it shouldn't happen either. I think a lot of people start calling immediately for, it should be banned because, but that's just not going to happen. Seriously, the technology is going to happen no matter what. So instead, we need to start thinking with the ethical constraints and legal constraints that need to be in place to allow this to happen safely. And without, I think the major things we're most concerned of is somebody emulating, the president's voice and calling into army stations and saying certain things, like we're launching rockets or whatever. That's where it gets scary, right? That's the kind of stuff we'd be really aware of. Or even calling the bank and emptying out your bank account because you sound like somebody or whatever, or even calling the spouse and getting them to do it, right? People already do that right now. They call elderly people and say, hey, it's your son, I'm really in need of $5,000, here's my account, just need to follow these steps, right? That stuff already happens.
The potential for the potential for social engineering is huge. The nice thing is I think at least on this end where we're focusing a lot on the entertainment aspect, because the ability for fraud is going to be a challenge regardless, and technology is going to be a whole issue there. But if we kind of limit the conversation a little bit to our entertainment and the things we proceed, I do think where smart people and smart companies could get ahead of this. I could almost see, here's the hot take that I'm going to throw in there right now. Making the digital version the equivalent of an NRT for someone's voice, essentially, so that they could sell literally the rights to sound like this. In the future.
That's the only way it can be done. Yeah.
I could see that occurring in some way.
No, that defeats one of the entire purposes of this AI thing. It's like the market just dropped out on every hard to work with voice actor. We don't need you. We can just make it ourselves. Right?
Well, it depends.
So suddenly voice actors aren't hard to work with anymore, and they're cheap. So you're going to read the lines that are written for you, and you're going to do it for a cup of coffee, but at least you'll be employed and not serving cups of coffee.
Well, it'll be interesting, right?
I am all for. I'll tell you what. This is probably going to make people mad at me, but nobody gave a damn about the coal miners. And if you're not going to give a damn about the people that bust their ass every day, I don't really give a damn about you walking into a studio and being difficult to work with while you record some lines into a microphone. Sorry.
I don't think two
just
wrongs
don't.
make a right. And like I said, I think it comes down to these people will still make money. I think it'll just be on, we have real voice actors as opposed to, oh, you're just using the generic AI stuff. And plus,
yeah, and I guess for the 3 people out there that are going to buy a game based on that'll work.
I think, hey, look at the people who still buy artisan stuff. It still exists out there. You go to any mall and you still find that one store that has artisan crafts that are ridiculously expensive, and they're still purchased by the elites.
That's fair.
Here's going to be the hot take that we don't have time to converse today, and maybe we'll pick up another time. But as all the technology improves to a point where it's almost indiscernible from real life, I'm kind of curious, because what if all entertainment transitions to artificially generated? And I leave it at that, to the point of the things that'll get people like, what? You know, you can see already with music and acting as potential things, right? Where you need a creative spark perhaps, but the visualization and stuff like that could be all generated elsewhere. But think now to all the thing of competitive environments that you watch to root for one thing or another, be it sports or otherwise. Why couldn't it all be digital? And you basically don't need people risking the argument of their bodies for the sake of entertainment, because all of that can be mimicked off an AI. I know there's a piece of but I want the thrill and the randomness and the stuff like that.
Well, sports is tough, and Ken mentioned video games, so I feel like we need to elaborate on this a little bit, right? There are players who have not reacted well to their situations, either where they're playing or their teammates or whatever, that you can't replicate in a video game. And this is going to be a little obscure for people who don't know, but the one that always comes to mind to me is Danny Manning. So if you play Danny Manning in a basketball video game in the late 80s, early 90s, he's really, really good. But he wasn't nearly as good in real life, for a variety of reasons, one of which being that the teams that he was on were not very good. And so he was not very good, right? But if you look at, in this environment where you give players ratings and height matters maybe more than it necessarily should inside the world of a video game versus in the real world, like he's way better than he should be. Trying to think of another one off the top of my head.
Sure, but that's just designed by developers being bad. I mean, in reality, if an AI was making those decisions, it probably would have looked at the stats and made a representative AI.
If an AI was trained properly on good source material,
somebody was just
theoretically you could mimic things more close to reality than what is perhaps sometimes represented in games.
Sure, but that's a really complex multivariate problem.
Agreed.
Add into that the art of the psych out, and that sometimes psych outs are on an individual by individual level, right? Anybody who had to guard Michael Jordan back in the day, right?
Well, but that's the thing. I think, though, with proper AI, you could start to simulate a lot of these things. Yes, it's complex, but I think and that's where I'm not saying we're anywhere close to that today, but it's more proposing the potential for, as technology keeps improving, do we see a day when, and this is just a piece, but it's a big piece, all entertainment is left in the hands of artificially created routines, right? That it's all...
I totally buy most. I don't know if I buy all, because there's still... I think there are aspects to sports that are...
Oh, I think sports is a hard one, because there's a lot of random factors.
Well, and I want to say this the right way, because Ken's the big AI guy, and I don't want. It's not like I want to crap on his field, that are beyond reasonable extensions of AI, say in our lifetime.
So,
like, is it possible that someday that you could accurately, totally model sports? Probably. At the rate in which processing power and so on advances, sure, I buy that too. I'm just saying, like, in the next, between now and, say, I don't know, 2050, I don't know that you're going to be able to, if you did models of sports and prop them up against real life, right? Because we have historical data. So whatever AI model you come up with, it's still going to have to fit historical data too, which means you're going to have to be able to put the 1992, 1993 NBA season into the model and have it spit out the right answer, right? That we already
I think that's
know.
perfectly doable, but I think the point you're getting at is, in the end, any AI, no matter how much it's learned, no matter how perfect it seems to be and how much computing power is behind it, it's always a model of the real world. It will never actually be the real thing,
Well,
and therefore there will always be slight inconsistencies,
and
regardless.
so with that,
because no model is perfect.
To speak to a level that might bring it potentially into a closer time frame as we end things here, how long would it take for an AI to get good enough to satisfy the majority of consumers? Not to be perfect, but good enough that the average consumer accepts it.
Oh God.
Because I feel like that's going to put a wrinkle in you for you, Todd.
Tomorrow?
I'm just saying, right? Because you only got to convince people. You don't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be 100% true. It just has to be real enough that the person says, yeah, I believe that. And
given you know the fact that most people are lemmings and yeah, tomorrow.
I was gonna say, I felt like I targeted that towards your cynicism, but
well, yeah.
But regardless, my hope as we end things is that these advances in technology will, much like I talked about with streaming, provide more options for content creators and consumers to have better content in general as we go forward, so that we will see more things that all elevate to just better things for us to consume. Because as a consumer, dang it, if I don't want to have beautiful, great sounding things thrown in my eyeballs and ears every day, regardless of the source. And if this makes it easier for creators to do so, I'm all for it.
Can you imagine feeding an AI Firefly and it's spitting out the next 2 seasons? And maybe if you even tell it like it needs to end with this film being the final episode, and it makes all that happen. Can you imagine that one day happening?
There's so many things I could. The challenge is the person who throws the wrench into the art of thing and throws in the Fox exec as an AI element, and they still kill it.
Ken, you spent so much time thinking about whether or not you could do a thing that you didn't stop to think of whether we should.
Oh, and that is a forever argument to be had about everything we experience. Yeah. So, everybody, we have taken you on a ride today.
We have.
So I am going to even cut myself off here from giving the final say and say, Ken, could you do us the honors of letting us out of here so that people continue and start their week?
You have been watching, listening, and enjoying ShowX here on VGW ShowX on Twitch or on our Versus the World video YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to there if you haven't already, or to follow us on Twitch, or subscribe if you'd like to there as well. That's very much appreciated. Check us out everywhere, all over the interwebs, by going to linktr.ee/ShowX. That's got our links for everything out there. Absolutely everything. So you want to find our Instagram, and then you're into that, that's your kind of thing, you can go along there and check us out there. If you like Reddit, we've got Reddit. You can check it out on Linktree as well. All the links are there. That way we don't have to tell you 100 different links. Just go to Linktree. Easy peasy. Thank you so much for hosting the show today, Mr. Wayne. We very much appreciate all the hard work you do with making sure everything runs smoothly and getting over all the technical challenges. And thank you so much for joining us as well, Todd. I love having somebody who can contradict me and tell me opposing opinions in such a respectful way. I really do appreciate that.
I appreciate you too, Ken. There are not, I am not broadly optimistic about many things, and so hearing optimism from people is refreshing, because if everybody was a cynic, like, yuck. So we need, I recognize the need for the optimists out there, and I appreciate them when I run across them. So thank you, sir.
All right. With that, guys, we're out of here. As always, please contact and email us in so we know your thoughts. We love when you guys interact with us. And thank you guys for everyone who watched us live today. We appreciate the chat as well. We are out of here. Next week will be interesting because I'll be hosting a Game Fest, so we'll see who's here, who's what when it comes time to broadcast, but there will be a show. And so we'll go from that. But with that, we're out of here, everybody. And we want to say a big salute for everyone participating and being in here. And we are out of here.
Goodbye. See you next zombie.